This week I've got Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, which at this point, really, why are we putting the Fantastic Beasts beginning buffer on it? Shouldn't it be like Harry Potter movie universe, The Crimes of Grindelwald? Because really, there are less beasts in this. It feels like a stretch to call this a Fantastic Beasts movie. It is one in that Newt Scamander appears again. You know, we see kind of that timeline versus the Harry Potter timeline that we're used to seeing in the wizarding world. And I had to go back and I had to look at what I gave the first film because in retrospect, I don't remember particularly liking the first film. Like, I remember being excited at the time because, of course, anytime anything new Harry Potter comes out, you get super excited because it's hard not to. And it's one of those franchises like Star Wars where it almost doesn't matter the quality of it. I'm going to have to see it anyway because I just love the universe and I love the experience. And it just means so much to me that I will continue to see the things even though I've been burned before. You see it in Star Wars. You've seen, we lived through episodes 1, 2, and 3, and yet we still went and saw episodes 7 and 8, and actually they were good. So I feel like Fantastic Beasts is a little bit the prequels for Harry Potter as, the prequels were to Star Wars. Newt Scamander's back, played by Eddie Redmayne again, who, is a fine actor, but he just feels like he's Eddie Redmayne. I assume this is just what Eddie Redmayne is in real life. And again, I had to go back and I was like, what did I give the first one? I gave it a 4 out of 5, which I kind of want to downgrade because it hasn't aged well. And moving into this next one, it's like, where's the gap? Where's the whatever? I will say, I actually feel like I enjoyed this one more, but I also realized that they are worse movies. I reframed my expectations for these films. Anyway, this one takes place in 1927, so it takes place after the events of what happened in the first movie. My favorite is somebody posted a photo of Jude Law plays Dumbledore, and they posted a photo of 1927 Jude Law Dumbledore and 1938 meets young Voldemort, Michael Gambon Dumbledore. That's not a lot of time. What happened in those 11 years to make you go from Jude Law to Michael Gambon? Just look it up. It's insane. I think the thing that I appreciated about this film is okay, now there are stakes for characters I care about, right? I don't care about what happened to Newt Scamander. I'm sorry. I just don't care what happened to him. He doesn't have resonance for me, but Dumbledore is a character I care about. Dumbledore is a character whose backstory I find appealing and interesting, and I want to know more, but then the more I see of it, the more I'm like, maybe I don't want to know more. So we get young Dumbledore, who is not political, but secretly political, and then we have our villain in Grindelwald, who's played by Johnny Depp, and he made me cringe in a way that I don't think the filmmakers wanted me to cringe in. I'm very uncomfortable with seeing Johnny Depp on the screen. If you weren't following, there's of course all the domestic violence, not just accusations, but suit against him by his ex-wife, and she won that suit and then gave all her money to charity. So, it wasn't a money grab. It was literally I'm pretty sure beat her. And so the fact that Warner Brothers and J.K. Rowling have doubled down on his casting is really disappointing to me. And every time I saw him on screen, I was like, oh, I'm really not happy you're in this. Also, he's just not good in it. That's its own issue. Maybe if he was amazing as Grindelwald, I'd be like, okay, you know what? I kind of get why they really put their weight behind you, but I don't feel like he gave that performance. It's not a Jack Sparrow level memorable. It's not even a Mad Hatter level interesting. It's just kind of weird pontificating, and he's got one eye that's a different color, and this movie was a mess. And the weird thing is, again, I feel like I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the first one, but I still recognize that it was a mess. And I think maybe the first one was one of those rose-colored glasses. The first entry, you're just excited to have it there, and then you realize later that no, this was actually pretty bad. The plot is a middle movie. We know that this is a multiple movie series. It's interesting that J.K. Rowling actually wrote this one. Usually it's a story based on a story by J.K. Rowling. This time she actually wrote it, which I kind of worry about the lack of distance there and lack of objectivity, but it was fine for a movie script. My thing is, I just I don't care. I don't care about any of the characters except for Dumbledore, and he's not even in it that much, spoilers on that front, but not. And I'm just I just want to see what happens the next one. It's just plot-wise, not character-wise, plot-wise. Just because I want to see what happens in the wizarding world, and I want to see how we set up, how do we get from where we're at the end of this movie to the world of Voldemort in 1938 when you become Michael Gambon. I'll give it points for a couple things. More diverse cast, which also unfortunately feels a little bit like retconning. It's oh, look, now there are Asian wizards, now there are black wizards, now there are French wizards. I don't know. But I always appreciate diversity, even if it's a little too late. And there's a lot of conversation about diversity in the wizarding world and, in the world of Harry Potter that we're used to. And yes, I get it. It takes place in Britain. It's a lot of white people. Anyway, they seem to have tried to rectify that on the thing. There's a lot of themes of fascism and there are themes of basically this is something we dealt with in Harry Potter itself, but, purebloods versus muggles, and it's something that's being echoed in, like, society right now, and in terms of, like, supremacists and such and such. So in that sense, it does feel like it's timely. I think but there will always be a battle for good and evil. There was one line that was like, the beast of burden will always be necessary from Grindelwald. And I was like, oh, is this straight up out of a Nazi playbook? ? There are a couple, there are plenty of things that I didn't like about this movie. I'm not going to spoil them. I'm not going to go into details. I'm sure plenty of people will. Like, you'll see for yourself. You'll probably get it. There are things that I almost wish they'd committed more to. There are things where I'm like, J.K. Rowling might be the greatest troll. She and George R.R. Martin might be tied for, like, greatest trolls of all times in terms of, like, what they do to their own histories and what they, like, suddenly decide, like, this is canon. This is a thing now. Here's something you've never, ever heard of. Now it's a thing. And you can't question it because I created it. I felt like that a lot in this movie. Like, at the very end, I was just like, what the hell is happening? Overall, still sort of invested because it's a Harry Potter movie or a Fantastic Beasts movie or whatever you want to call this universe now. But I still, it was fine. It's a little long, as these ones tend to be. I think they kind of need to trim the fat on the cast. It's trying to make it an ensemble almost. And, like, Katherine Waterston, what is she? I think she's possibly the worst casting choice for this movie. She has the chemistry of a wet paper bag. Eddie Redmayne, fine, whatever. We're clearly stuck with him. I like Dan Fogler as the friend. Like, the sister is just, I don't know. I just feel lukewarm on this movie. Lukewarm. Maybe at the end of it, it'll all be worth it, but I don't get that sense. Like, I don't feel like they're heading in a direction where they know where they're going, but I'm still going to be along for the ride because it's a Harry Potter movie. I kind of want to retroactively lower my rating of the first one. I'm going to lower it down to maybe like a 3.5 out of 5, and that's being generous still. But this one, I'm really only going to give a 2.5. It's really middling, and really it's just a placeholder until the next one. And if the next one doesn't, like, pay off, I really think we'll all be regretting spending this much time on this. So 2.5 out of 5 for Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald. The other movie I have this week is called The Frontrunner, and this was tough. I saw this one right in the middle of midterm elections, and so it was, like, particularly timely, but also really exhausting. Like, I felt a sense of, and I'm still feeling a sense of, extreme political fatigue, like, public about being a Democrat, and, like, feeling slightly relieved after the midterm elections, but still realizing, like, this is a really tough situation we're in. There's a lot to do. And so seeing a movie like The Frontrunner was kind of painful to watch. It stars Hugh Jackman as Gary Hart, who was the actual Democratic presidential, like, nominee frontrunner in 1988. And, I was not old enough to know what was going on here, so this is kind of news to me, but other people were saying it did feel as if it was realistic to the time and the coverage. And so it follows Gary Hart's campaign, and basically what happened is, and sorry, this is sort of spoilers, but this is also a true story, so it's kind of in the public, but basically he got caught in a quasi-extramarital affair. Like, it's a little bit like his relationship was already on the rocks with his wife, and whatever. Either way, scandal breaks out, and it completely derails his presidential nomination. And he's like, why, this shouldn't be about my public persona, this should be about the issues, and et cetera, and it's very painful and interesting to watch how accountable we were holding candidates in 1988 versus, say, how accountable we're holding candidates or elected officials now, where you could basically be derailed as the frontrunner for the president because you had an extramarital but consensual relationship with a woman, whereas now if you can be the president of the United States if you grab people by the pussy. Like, seriously, what the hell world do we live in? So this movie was pretty painful to sit through and watch. It's not preachy, which is good, but I also feel like as a byproduct, it's also not decisive. Like, he's not necessarily an endearing character. If you agree with his politics, you kind of want to root for him, but he's also, he's got his flaws. He's a three-dimensional character. And I thought, in that sense, that's not something we always see in, like, political current movies. You definitely see a lot of, like, messagey, this is how you should feel, this is how whatever. But this one doesn't commit to that, but at the same time, I don't know if it had its own viewpoint, and it got kind of lost in trying to remain too neutral. Overall, though, it's a fine movie. Like, I don't know if you need to see it in theaters, to be honest. It was certainly an interesting but painful comparison to now, but if you're like me and you're feeling just super burnt out, like, maybe wait till this one comes out on, digital or Blu-ray, or maybe just wait till, like, there's a different administration in the White House and you can breathe. I'm only going to give this one 2.6 out of 5 just because, like, I feel like it just needed a bit more of a commitment on the filmmaker viewpoint, even if it was like an internal barometer, not necessarily like I think it would have helped a lot, and so it made it a little messy to watch. So 2.6 out of 5.